You are listening to True Crime Twins, a new true crime podcast produced by Crawlspace Media. Welcome back to True Crime Twins. I'm Chloe.
Melina here.
And we are here to tell you about a case that you might not have heard of. It is very mysterious. It's still unsolved. It involves a 23-year-old woman named Jody LeCornu. She was a senior at Towson State University studying geriatrics. The night she was killed, she had a fight with her live-in boyfriend and went out to the Mount Washington Tavern and had a few drinks. She left the bar, went to a liquor store and bought a 6-pack of beer. And as she sat in the parking lot, she was approached by a man who is still unidentified. Witnesses described an African-American male standing at about 5'10", wearing a camouflage jacket, in his mid-30s, approached the vehicle, and he actually reached in and shot Jody in the back. The bullet hole went through the back of the driver's seat and severed her spine. Despite being shot, Jody was able to drive across the street into another parking lot, a giant parking lot, and hit a curb, stopping the car. What happened next, Melina?
After Jody's car came to a stop, the suspect drove over to the next lot towards Jody's car and got out, reached in, and grabbed something, still unknown to this day what he grabbed, and then he left.
So this crime was actually, it was in the view of a surveillance camera, but it was snowing that night, so unfortunately the law enforcement was unable to decipher what was going on. So everything that we know about what had happened in the night in question is based on witnesses' accounts. It occurred right across the street from a gas station, so there were at least 5 or 6 witnesses at that time. I learned about this case about 2 years ago. When Tim and Lance launched Crawlspace, we got a lot of requests from people to cover certain cases, and one that really stood out to me was a plea from a woman named Jenny Carrieri. She tweeted to us about her twin who was murdered in Baltimore County back in February of 1996. Since, as everyone knows, Melina and I are twins, that really resonated with me, thinking about how that must feel to lose someone that close to you. And I looked into the story and I had never heard of it. So I ended up calling Jenny, and she and I really connected, and I've just been really wanting to cover this story and have everyone hear from her. She is this fierce and inspiring advocate for her sister, and 23 years later, she is still fighting for answers. So we had a great interview with Jenny, and now let's roll the tape so you can hear it for yourself. Thank you so much, Jenny LeCornu, for joining us. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you. I really appreciate you guys sharing Jody's story.
It's our pleasure. I think it's a case that really deserves more attention, and we're really happy to have you on to sort of share Jody's story from your unique perspective as her twin sister. So I guess a good place to get started is to just tell us a little bit about Jody LeCornu.
Oh my gosh, Jody was just such a sweet girl. Everybody loved her. She was kind to everybody. It didn't matter who you were, who it was. She just was very, she would give you the shirt off her back. She just, I just love the story. When she was waitressing, she would, would take classes and work. And one of the waitresses one day said, "I like your shirt, Jody." And she said, "Did you want it?" She would like give the shirt off her back. I mean, she just was very, 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 just a kind person. And my dad, I always think about, how he called her our sunbeam. She just kind of glowed. She was definitely the more outgoing one. And I was always the shy one. And but that being said, she definitely, as she got older, she developed a lot of anxiety, just really afraid of everything. And I don't know if that, I guess the more I learn about anxiety, it seems like a lot of people, as they get close to their 20s, like it seems to be a time like where they start having issues with that. But, she was living in Baltimore and had a lot of anxiety about living there. She lived there with her boyfriend, and she had a dog. She loved her dog, and she struggled, like I said, with the anxiety, but she really she was just such a good person.
It really sounds like she was just a special kind of person, and that you two had a very special relationship. You said, she was the outgoing one, you were the shy one. Do you feel like you're just, growing up together as twins sort of shaped your personalities?
I guess we kind of like completed each other. I mean, I kind of felt like that, she just, I always felt very more comfortable. I mean, we were always together, always growing up, like inseparable. My parents used to dress us alike, and we would be in the same classes, the same friends. We were referred to. It was like we were one person. You know what I mean? Like we'd go to our friend's house, and they'd be like, "The twins are coming over," and we were like, it was always just like us as one. You know what I mean? And you probably know, being twins. When we grew up, it was a small town, and definitely people were just mesmerized by twins. And we would, when we'd start school, middle school, I immediately it was really nice, because that's a tough age, and people just right away were nice to us, because they're like, oh, twins, and they just had fun with trying to tell us apart. And so it was nice. We definitely, I feel like that was good that, because like in starting high school, and but we had the same room, but I always, like I said, I was referred to as Jenny the Wimp, and she just was just out there, So if you could, even when you look at the pictures, you can see that she definitely was the more like outgoing, glamorous one. She like always had her, I was kind of like the nerdy one. Like she always had her hair, like this great hairdo, and the zinc pink lipstick. She was known for this like lipstick. And I mean, she just was definitely like out there. You know what I mean?
No, it sounds like you're kind of yin and yang. And I think we can relate. Yeah. And we can relate to that.
You can relate to that.
For sure. Just growing up. And I mean, when you emerge into adulthood, and you spend more time apart, when you go to the same school and you're in the same classes, you're with each other every day, I feel like those personality differences become really natural, because like you said, you sort of complete each other. So for me, myself, I was always the more outgoing one, the more daring one, and Melina was the shyer one. And we can definitely relate to, it's sort of a really nice conversation starter. People want to, tell you apart and do all that fun stuff. So it's really nice growing up and being close with your twin.
Yeah, that's interesting to hear to hear it from another. I mean, I've never talked to another twin about that. I like hearing that. That's interesting.
Yeah.
And so were you guys in the same classes and same room and all that?
My mom eventually had us separated because she didn't think that it was good for our, I guess, like our emotional development to just have each other. I think I don't know. I don't think it's like this for everyone, but I think maybe it made it a little bit harder for us to make friends. Like, I think it is a good conversation starter, but perhaps it motivated us just a little bit less to branch out when we always had each other to fall back on. And it's very comforting to always have like a built-in friend. But she must have read it in a book somewhere or something.
Oh, wow. Oh, my gosh. Yeah, we eventually got separated, but it was sort of a kind of a different story. But, but we were definitely always together.
And then, so, you said when she was 23, she was living in Baltimore and living with her boyfriend. Where were you living at the time?
So I had ended up out, out west. Jody and I had gotten into some struggles in high school, and I don't know how much of it you want me to go into, but that's what initially, separated us. And my parents, I guess I could kind of say that they separated us. My parents took me out to Wyoming. We had family out there, and my grandparents had retired out there, and they put me on a dude ranch. And we were just we got wild in high school, and so my Jody ended up going to Baltimore and moving in with her boyfriend, and she had calmed down, and my parents were still trying to work on me.
Right.
So that's why they put me out there, and so I was I look back and I'm thinking, I don't know why. I mean, I know why. I had gotten my life together out there, and so I ended up. I thought, I'm just gonna stay. It was like a summer job on a dude ranch, and we still talked on the phone every day, and we racked up, with the landline phones. I don't even see those anymore, but we racked up phone bills all the time, and I just decided, we had some cousins in California, that I was like, I'm just going to go out here for a little bit and just sort of keep up, try to, stick with the straight and narrow path. And I thought, if I came back, that I was worried about what would happen, not being with her, but just being in the same scene, you know what I mean? And so it ended up, that's how I ended up going to California, but I got engaged out there, and that's what kept me out there, sadly. I mean, but like I said, we still stayed in touch, and, had no problem racking up credit card bills to fly home to see her, you know what I mean? It was a bit irresponsible, but we always, we wanted to be with each other. But
Yeah.
We were both then having these relationships,
Yeah, no, and we went to college in different states, and at this time, so when you and Jody were separated, it was in the 90s. When we were separated, it was starting in, I think, 2012. So our form of communication was pretty much daily FaceTiming or video chatting.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so we were like you were describing, pretty much we kept in very close contact. Even though we were physically separated, we made a point of it to stay in touch and to stay close, because it's such an important relationship.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, we wanted to be together, and so yeah, I mean, it was definitely I don't know. I have so many mixed emotions about it, just hate that we were separated for that time, and then she was killed when I was out there, there was alcoholism in our family, and Jody and I started to go down that path, and so that's what happened, is we ended up in rehab, and that when we were there, we couldn't, they wouldn't let us be together there in the treatment program. So that was actually not, probably when we were separated from the hip, you know what I mean? They didn't want us to be, they wanted us to sort of just get healthy on our own. And, I mean, she actually, when she got out of the treatment, a little while after, she had started drinking again. But, so I stayed, sober, and but she struggled with it, and that was a big problem with her, with her boyfriend. They both drank. He was a lot older than her. And, even though she was functioning, it wasn't good for her. And it was sort of, I don't know if that's the right word, fueling her anxiety. She, it was I guess it's being on a hamster wheel. I don't know how to describe it, but you're anxious and you think you need something to calm your nerves, and then you wake up and you're anxious again. That was her thing. And, and that was a lot of their issues is, she liked to go out and locally. I mean, there was a tavern that she liked to go to, which was the night before she died. And, she, was there, and her boyfriend, he liked to be at home and just be with her and drink at home, and she wanted to, just go with her friends, and, that's what happened when they got into a fight the night, before that morning of March 1st. He told her not to come home. She left and then went to the bar, the Mount Washington Tavern, which is where she liked to go, and he was a teacher, so he was at a school dance. So she went to the tavern and spent a good part of the evening there. She had gone with a couple of her friends, and she ended up, there was an employee that somebody had asked her to drive home, and it was snowing that night, and she would not have driven in the snow. And I mean, like I said, she was afraid of she was afraid, and she went to sit in a dark parking lot after she dropped him off. She did stop and buy a 6-pack of beer, which, we go back and forth. Maybe was she meeting somebody in that parking lot? And why didn't she she had lots of friends. Why didn't she have a place to stay? Figure out a place to stay. So she was afraid. She was afraid she was going to get shot in Baltimore. I mean, she would say that. She was afraid of her closet. Like I said, when I talk about her anxiety, it was very severe. So it was just very out of character. I mean, this employee was handicapped a bit, mentally handicapped, and so he didn't really talk well. I don't know. He was the janitor, and so I don't know. I just, like, that late at night for her to drive somebody home, I don't know that she knew him that well. And so it's just like saying the whole night was so bizarre that my family just can't figure out, and then going to sit in this parking lot, and she made some phone calls in the parking lot, and, coupled back to the bar, one to a friend of hers. It was a girl that she had actually moved in with her for a period of time prior to that. The girl, I think she didn't have a place to live, and that was Jody. She just, helped somebody, and but it was, she called their house and talked to her boyfriend, and so there's just so many different pieces. These calls, the people that she talked to knew where she was. She left the bar. I would assume she had talked to people, and I don't know if she had told people where she was going, but so she's sitting there in the Caldor parking lot, which is now the Drum Castle Government Center, and she witnesses saw an African-American approach her vehicle. And there was so parallel to where she was parked, there was a gas station, and I believe there was the attendant. That was like a 24-hour gas station. He called 911. And then across the street, about 4 or 5 lanes, is a 24-hour Giant and a Boston Market where there was a truck where there was workers unloading for the night. I mean, it was in the middle of the night, but there was witnesses around, and they told me there was up to 6 witnesses. So they said that they think there might have been a conversation. He walked up to her. Her window was rolled down, but he shot her from behind. Like, she was shot in the back. It went through the back of the car and into the seat, and they tell us that it severed her spine. But we don't know because we're unable to see anything. They will not give my family the autopsy. They won't give us any, the original police report, any of the medical records, nothing. We can see nothing. And so, but it's just interesting. They say she severed her spine, but she was able to drive. I mean, to get out of that parking lot was pretty difficult, and then to drive across 4 or 5 lanes into the Giant parking lot. She drove across the street, and that's where the witnesses saw this. He was in a white BMW, follow her, and she did a huge circle around the Giant parking lot, where there were people there as well, and the police tell us that the cameras were not working that night in the parking lot, And so she ended up coming to a stop, and I believe she hit a curb. And the witnesses saw the suspect drive up to her car and they said he reached over her and put her car in park and took something out of her car, and just was very slow, not in a rush, and just got back in his car and slowly drove out of there and turned a right on York Road and then a right on Walker Avenue. And that's all that's what we're told. And, I've been trying really hard to get more information, and over the years trying to, my father was a prosecutor for drug and violent crime in another county. And, there were so many different theories that they looked at. And, he would, for years, I just couldn't even cope. I just was very, just like trying to live. And I was so worried about my parents, and wanted to make sure, that they weren't sad. And I was always like a caretaker. And so I wasn't involved in the investigation, and just assumed that the police were, the whole murder, it's just it was just so this doesn't happen. This is something you see on TV. And so, I just didn't understand anything. And I was such a wreck. I couldn't even be alone in a room by myself. I actually moved back after she died. And several years later, I ended up meeting somebody, and we eloped. And because I didn't want to have a wedding, I was like, how could I possibly have a wedding? And my father got sick with cancer, and I spent a lot of time taking care of him, and he died, and it was another horrible time. He was sick, so he had this bed that he would lay in, and there was all this stuff under his bed about Jody, and the newspaper articles and notes he'd write. And so as time went on, and me being the wimpy one, I was always, my husband would tell me, you need to get a backbone, because he'd always see people taking advantage of me and things. And I say that because all of a sudden I just turned into this person where I was like, oh my gosh, I am going to figure out what happened to her, and I will go to any lengths. And I just started trying every avenue, reaching out to people and talking to the police and trying to get all the information I could, and talking to just whoever, going back to the bar and trying to get her story out on the anniversary, and just constantly, the same detective's been on the case since day one, and I would just constantly reach out to him, asking him questions and just trying to figure all this out. And so it's almost like I took on her strength, you know what I mean? And just have been on this mission that I have never let go of, you know what I mean? I have not let go of it. And, it's caused, like I said, I had the lawsuit for, it was a long time trying to get her file, trying to get records. And it was just very difficult going through that with the police. It caused a nasty relationship. And, it's not that I didn't want that, but, all I want is to find out who killed Jody. And it's just, I feel sometimes like I'm the bad person here. It's like I would reach out to everybody, write letters to the county executive. I was just trying to I would just still today lay in bed at night. Who can I talk to? Who can I reach out to? Who else can I share her story to? I just reach out to people. I'm like, will you please share her story? I reach out to reporters and whoever, and one thing leads to another. And so, it's incredible the amount of support that I've gotten from like the reporters and the journalists and people wanting to help and share her story. And, it's interesting. I've had people that I don't even know that want to help. I had she became a friend that helped, or she did it, the Justice for Jody page, because I don't know how to do anything on a computer, even though that's what my degree was in college, but I don't know how to do anything. She developed, we're revamping that right now. And, and I had 3 children over the years, and it's caused, a tremendous stress in my family and in my relationship with my husband. And I see, he's supportive, but it comes to times, with the lawsuit and we've put a ton of money, mainly my mother, and we've put some in. I don't know if I said this, but, it was under $20,000 trying to get her file and her files. And, like I said, the stress on the family life, and just because I'm so consumed by it. And it's like I feel like I'm not, a lot of times I'm not present. Like I feel like my kids like might be talking to me, and I'm like thinking about something about Jody. And, I was at my middle son's lacrosse game yesterday, and I was on the headset, like on my earbuds, doing a call about a meeting I had about Jody's case today, the whole time. But I'm watching the game, but it's like, it's definitely, I'm constantly doing stuff. And, people are like, why are you doing this? You're killing yourself. And, it's not going to bring her back. And it kind of makes me mad when people say that. And, but it's like, I can't not do it. It's, how can I not? Like, I could just never just like let go and just, move on. I mean, I've had periods of like severe depression. I mean, it was like, the anniversary, the 22nd year anniversary. And I just, because I feel like I truly haven't, like I haven't fully grieved, It's like you just kind of go through the motions of life, and I have lots of blessings. Feel very lucky, but it's like there's always this sadness in me, and it just like hits me, And I just got real low, and I just was like, I had no desire to live, and I was doing like desperate things. I started reaching out to a prisoner and just doing things that weren't safe, somebody that I believe is involved, and just things that I can't get too specific in. But my husband, and I didn't tell him right away, and he's like, when I finally told him, he was very upset. Like, what are you doing? We've got children. You're putting us in danger. And but it was like I didn't care. I was like, I didn't care that if the bullet that took her took me. Yeah, it's just like I was like, I really like I had to get help, because I was just feeling I'm I've got to get it together. Like I'm a mother, I'm a wife, and so I still struggle with that balance, And the end of this year, I was like, okay, like, 'cause I was like hitting a low point, and I was like, and I struggle with my own issues still with the anxiety and an eating disorder, and it's just like, and it gets really out of whack, and the depression, and it's like, and then I'm like, oh my God, like I've got to like take care of myself. And I was like, the end of this last year, I was like, I'm really just going to like do less. But then like all of a sudden and I just started getting these calls from like the Today Show and People Magazine, and it was just like turned into this huge thing. But I'll back up because I didn't get into the billboards yet.
I was just going to bring up the billboards, because that was something I thought was pretty genius, and it got a ton of press. Like I saw the headlines just all over social media, help, who killed Jody, find my killer, and it just has this amazing picture of you, and you do not look like wimpy Jenny. You look like a warrior in your pink coat standing in front of those billboards. It's amazing what you've done.
Oh, well, that's the thing. Like, I feel like I've just turned into this force to be reckoned with. So we saw that movie, Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, and I loved it. And I thought, I'm going to do this. The first one went up on York Road, and we picked it down there as close as we could to where she died. And I am telling you, I had so many. It was amazing. Like, I had all the Baltimore channel. Like, I'm literally driving up to Baltimore, and I'm getting called from CNN and Good Morning America. Like, all these people are like, can you come in? And it was just like insane. But I mean, fantastic and wonderful. Like, I just was just like I will just do any interview. Like, cause I think each time I do an interview, I think this is going to be it. This is going to be it. And, and that billboard was up for 6 weeks, and they did have a few calls come in. And then I was like, you know what? I am going to do 3 billboards because, just thought, like, after the movie, and put them up throughout the city. I felt like I wanted to get them sort of near more of the crime element area. And so we picked different spots in the city, going through, working with Clear Channel to put 3 billboards up. And that went worldwide, like, did interviews with like BBC and French Le Monde newspaper and French television. And like, I just saw an article they did about her in China. It was incredible, the attention that all the billboards have gotten. And I've recently done another one, and I'm not sure if you saw it, To the Governor. I designed that one. It has like the Maryland flag on it, and it has Jody's picture, and it says, Governor Hogan, please help my family find my killer. And so that's going up next week, like right near City Hall, and near the Baltimore police, like it's in the city. So I'm really excited about that one. I mean, I definitely get highs and lows. You know what I mean? Like, it's so many. Like I put these, like, I'm like, oh my gosh, well, like, her story's everywhere. Something's got to happen, And then it's like, and then like my phone rings, and I'm like, I'm thinking, this is it. They're going to call and tell me they have an arrest, and it's like, some sales call, and I'm like, like, so it's really hard.
Yeah.
Just like the emotions going through it, and it's people like you reaching out that want to help and share a story. I mean, that's what like lifts me up, No,
it's she really deserves it, and so do you and the rest of your family. It's such a mysterious story, and you've worked so hard to try to get answers, and it's just, I mean, this happened in 1996, and it's so unbelievably unfair that you're at this point. Do they know if the killer left any DNA behind?
Well, I mean, that's the thing. When I recently did the NBC interview with Lester Holt, they reenacted the crime scene, and they really believe that he touched her clothes. Touched her, like when he leaned over. There's no way he could not have not touched her. So we are working on getting. I have it all in place. Like, I've been working with the president of MVAC. If you guys are familiar with that, it's like a new way to extract the DNA.
Oh, very good. So
it's like a. I don't know if this is the best way to describe it. I think it's like a small little vacuum, and like they can try to get like the DNA off of her clothes. So that's what I'm like I said, it's like I'm working with different people, and then I have to go through the lawyers to, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So it's like nothing's easy.
No.
And so this has been going on for a couple of weeks, like waiting for them to like move forward on this. You know what I mean? They did get fingerprints, but they tell me they've never been able to match that up.
Okay, but they have the fingerprints on file. For a physical description, do they know how old this person is, how tall he might be?
I believe they said 5'10" in like his mid-30s.
Okay. And I mean, you were living on the other side of the country. From your contact with her friends, it sounded like you did a good amount of investigating on your own, going back to the bar and everything. Were you able to determine that whether or not Jody knew someone that matched that description?
No. I mean, not that I did not know of anybody. No, not at all. And that's just what's so, and I go back and forth like with the theory and my different theories in my head all the time. Like, was it random? But why was it a robbery? But if it was a robbery, why didn't he just put a gun up? If he's having a conversation with her, wouldn't a normal robbery, they just put a gun up to you and say, give me your purse?
Right.
And then there's the theory, was she wasn't, was the theory, was she buying drugs? I mean, she wasn't doing drugs. She had an alcohol problem. We did experiment in high school. Did she get into a big fight with her boyfriend and was like, you know what, I just can't take it anymore. I'm going to do something crazy, or, you know what I mean? Like, I just need to numb all this. I mean, maybe. But for her to, I would bet my life on she would never have stolen drugs from somebody and drove away. I mean, that's just not, that is one thing that I am 1,000,000% sure, that's just not something she would do. There's so many different scenarios that they thought about. Was it a random thing, somebody coming up to her, but why would he shoot her? Was maybe the guy was on drugs himself? Maybe, I really narrowed it down to there was no drugs in her system from what they tell us, but I've narrowed it down to two different theories, that I think maybe it was a random, or was he trying to sexually assault her, trying to get to her? Maybe it was a quick, maybe he walked up to her and she saw and she drove away, but just for him to shoot, it's just so odd. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. What is your guys' thoughts?
Well, I'm wondering, how long did the eyewitnesses say that they spoke before he went and shot her?
Well, I never got that. That's the thing, is that's never been told to me.
Yeah, because I feel like that would be such an important element. Yeah, to know if there was some familiarity there in the first place. But yeah, it could be just a random act of violence, but it's really hard to understand what the motive is. You mentioned there's a theory that she was, it was a prearranged drug deal, that she, and like you said, you really don't think this is the case, that, oh, what if she drove away without paying the guy? But that doesn't match what people saw at all.
She was in a bar that was known for cocaine. You could get it behind the bar. So if she's, known, it was popular, people were doing it there in the bar, and so why, if she was there since after work and she wanted it, and as scared as she was, why would she go in a dark parking lot and meet some dark stranger when she could get it from somebody she knew at the bar? Do you see what I'm saying?
Especially with how fearful she was about most everything. Yeah. It doesn't really match with what happened, because she's sitting in a parked car. The person approaches the car. She doesn't drive away until she's shot. So I don't think that doesn't explain why someone would shoot her. If she drove away and then someone shot her, maybe she ripped someone off. Maybe she was trying to get away from someone. But it seems like, from what it sounds like, the order of events is she was just sitting in the car. She wasn't trying to leave, and he shot her. Yeah.
It's, and then, I've had lots of people say, I think it was a hit, because she was shot from behind, and then he came back to check her pulse. There's just, the theories that I hear is just, that's the thing, is it's just, none of it adds up. All of it is just, like you said, just such a mystery,
Absolutely. And I think that's, this story really resonated with me, not just because, you know, I just me growing up in a similar way as you did, just with the twin sister and having that bond, and just not even being able to imagine how painful this whole experience has been for you. And
yeah, and the crazy thing is, it's like, I think because I was so numb for so long, it's like, it's more painful. Like, it's like as time goes on. I mean, it's been 23 years. I mean, she died when she was 23, and we just hit 23 years, you know, at the anniversary. And it was also my parents' wedding anniversary that she died on. It's just gotten really, really much more difficult. Like, I think because I'm dealing with her loss, you know, people would be like, for years, worried about me. They're like, you're not dealing with this, and dealing with her loss, and then dealing with trying to find the murderer. And so it's like, it can be so overwhelming. And then, you know, dealing with the system, you know, dealing with that, and just feeling like, you know, like, I think I mentioned earlier, like, I'm the bad person. Like, oh my gosh, like, it's so disheartening sometimes, you know, like thinking, like, don't these people, like, get it? Like, I think that there's many people that wish I would go away. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like,
yeah,
you know,
you're fighting for something, and you're getting pushback. It's frustrating.
Yeah.
And when you're in an adversarial relationship, of course, I think that'll make you feel like you're doing something wrong. But I hope you always come back to the fact that you're not.
Thank you. And, you know, and like the you know, my family life, and like, you know, and getting that, like, sadness, because I feel like my life is, I don't know how to describe, like part of me is missing, you know, and it's like, and I feel unsettled. I mean, there's a lot, and like I said, like, I just kept going through the motions. Like, even still today, I can't sit still. Like, I literally, I'm either like running like crazy, or I'm laying flat asleep. And when I'm laying flat asleep, I want it to be quick, because I don't want to, like, lay and think about anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Am I still being, like, a good mom and a good wife, and taking care of everybody, and you know, being there? You know, my youngest daughter, she's 9, and we have, like, a really strange relationship. I mean, we're in therapy, and you know, and there's, you know, I think because a lot of her life has been, like, really intense, that it's been, like, the intense part of me, like, searching for Jody's killer. I mean, just the other night, she was looking, you know, we have baby books for the kids, and I was looking for some pictures of Jody and I when we were little, for something, interview or something, and she all of a sudden was like, where's my baby book? Where's my baby book? Like, going in panic. Like, she wanted me to focus on, oh my gosh, it makes me emotional. Like, she wanted to, like look at her baby book. Oh my gosh. You know, I think she feels like I'm, like, so focused on Jody sometimes, and then it's like, she's like, what about me? What about me? And, you know, and she was, like, panicked about her book, like, we couldn't find it. But because I was like, oh my gosh, look at these pictures of Jody and I, and it's like, I know she's, like, you know, I know it's, like, hard on her. So, and it's like,
it affects all of you.
Like, so hard, because I feel like, you know, I want to, like, make that right. Make it right with her. And I'm sorry, it makes me so emotional.
No, it's such an emotion. It's so emotional.
It is, and I just feel like, you know, she and I struggle a lot, you know, and it's like, it's a lot of stress, and she acts out a lot, you know, and you know, and it's like this vicious cycle, you know, and it's like, so I'm trying to, like, really get right with this, and it's interesting because I don't have the issues with my boys, you know, they're 14 and 17, and but, like, you know, like, their early years, I wasn't so involved in Jody's case.
I just think your honesty about how this has affected, you know, not just you, but, like, the next generation, it just shows how much getting answers would mean for you. It's like this missing thing in your heart, and it doesn't affect just you. What this person did to Jody affects your whole family.
It's so huge. And like you saying it like that, like it just like, it's so true. You know what I mean? Like, it's like just looking at like the whole picture, you know, it is. It's like, it's affecting my whole family.
You're so inspiring, and you've been through just so much pain and anguish just over the past 23 years, but because of this violent act that just changed the trajectory of your life, and you're just overcoming obstacle after obstacle. You know, when you get your hopes up time and time again, and it's just crushed and taken away from you, but you still find a way to restore your spirit and your hope. It's very inspiring, and you know, anyone that's listening to this, I'm sure, is inspired and probably feels how I feel, which is that it's you deserve answers so much, and I just want that so badly for you. True Crime Twins is presented by Crawlspace Media and powered by Pulse Cellular,
America's fastest growing national wireless carrier. They have you covered with nationwide unlimited talk, text, and data plans in all 50 states and the Caribbean regions of the U.S., including Puerto Rico, Vieques, Culebra, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. It's 50 gigs per line, hotspot and Wi-Fi calling included. There are no contracts, no credit checks, and no average fees. The plans include talk, text, and 5 gigs of LTE data when traveling to Mexico or Canada.
And all of that with the best and latest phones. Do you already have a phone that works for you, but your plan sucks? Switching to Pulse is now simple and easy.
Our offer to our listeners is single line and family plans available, and by using promo code Crawlspace, you will receive 10% off of your monthly bill.
Go to pulsecellular.com and use promo code Crawlspace to get your 10% off today.
Don't overpay on your cell phone, you guys.
I really want to thank Jenny for coming on and sharing her experiences. She was so open about her perspective on how this all happened, on her childhood memories with Jody, and the aftermath of this case, and how the violent acts of the suspect have affected her and her entire family and future generations that never even met Jody. So thank you so much, Jenny. I just want to clarify the timeline a little bit before we go further into discussion. So after the bar closed on Friday night, she drove an employee of the bar home at 2 a.m. After she dropped him off, she went to an ATM. Then Jody picked up a 6-pack of beer and went to the Canter parking lot in Baltimore City, where she sat and made a few phone calls. She called the Mount Washington Tavern, where she had been out that night, to speak to the manager, but was told he was busy. She also called a friend of hers and spoke to that friend's boyfriend. A man who is the suspect, he pulled up in a white BMW to her white Honda Civic. She rolled her window down. After a brief exchange, Jenny wasn't sure how long. He fired a handgun through her back.
Was the gun pointed inside of the car or on the outside of the car?
What I'm looking at here says it was outside of the car. The bullet went through the driver's seat, the back of the driver's seat. So I'm not sure if he shot through the window or if the shot went through the door.
Okay, or if he was behind the car.
Right, but he had pulled up and was standing outside of the car speaking to her, and she had rolled down the window. So he was standing right in front of her, basically. He wasn't behind the car,
right,
at least when they first started speaking. So just breaking down things a little bit, I think an important point of confusion is whether or not Jody knew her perpetrator. That's something that Jenny was very clear about, that she's still not really sure. It's still really unclear based on the evidence. So Jody got into a fight with her boyfriend that night and was told to not come home. And her behavior later on was really out of character, as Jenny described. She was someone that was really anxious, was paranoid about something bad happening to her in Baltimore, being a victim of violent crime. She was afraid to drive in the snow, yet she was driving. She was afraid of being victimized, yet she was sitting alone in the parking lot at 2:30 in the morning. The question sort of is, why was she acting so out of character?
I have two theories on that. I think that it could have just been a temporary adjustment issue where she was upset that her boyfriend kind of ended things and she was sort of acting out because of an inability to cope.
I don't think he ended things. We were just told that he told her not to come home that night. I don't think anyone's reported a breakup.
I kind of assumed that because if you're kicking out your girlfriend, isn't that sort of like the end of the relationship or something really bad happening in the relationship?
Some relationships are more volatile than others. I think they were both drinking heavily.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it necessarily meant it was the end. I think maybe in a healthy relationship, once that happens, it's over. But
okay, well, either way, I'm sure that she was shook up from that at least a little bit. So maybe she was acting out as a result. But no matter what the reasoning is, her behavior was undoubtedly risky.
Right. And I think that's probably led some people to speculate that maybe she was, well, I think we know that she was intoxicated that night. It's led some people to think that maybe she was under the influence of drugs. Now, Jenny hasn't had access to the autopsy report and toxicology report, but she was told by law enforcement that there were no traces of drugs in Jody's system. So I think maybe what explains the change in behavior was what you were describing. You're coping with a sort of traumatizing event of a serious fight with a boyfriend and you're just trying to feel better. I think sitting and waiting in a parking lot and buying a 6-pack of beer sort of suggests wanting to go out and meet someone, which I think leads to the train of thought maybe her perpetrator was the person she was planning on meeting. But, I mean, think about it. When you're meeting someone, if you're waiting to pick someone up in the car, you wouldn't roll down the driver's side window in the snow and speak to them as they're standing outside talking to you. If you were expecting them, they would probably just wave to you, you unlock your door, and they enter your car and sit in the passenger seat.
Yeah, so maybe he approached her asking for something, pretending like he was lost, maybe.
Yeah, just the way that he approached her makes me feel like there's less familiarity. But like I said, since we don't know really how long they were talking, it's sort of hard to speculate. But I feel like if it was a planned meeting, he would have just approached the passenger seat.
Yeah.
The fact that she bought a 6-pack of beer also has led some people to think that it was a planned, prearranged meeting. But as Jenny described, she did have some issues with alcoholism, and perhaps it was just for her or for later. We know about certain phone calls that she had made. Jenny is privy to that information. So you'd think that if she was planning on meeting with someone that night, the police would have been able to glean that from her phone records. And as of yet, they haven't been able to do that.
Yeah, there is no phone record that could hint at the viability of a suspect. It's an unknown suspect.
Yeah, and we haven't seen the phone records, so we don't know. Maybe that's something that they're keeping under wraps. Maybe they do have a suspect based on the phone records, but you'd think that would kind of clarify things for them, and it would be a clear shot in moving forward that investigation.
Yeah.
But from what I think, given how deadlocked this case is, I don't think that they have an indication of who the suspect is based on phone records.
So let's talk about what this suspect might be doing now, what he might look like now. This happened 23 years ago. So how old approximately would this guy be now?
Jenny said that he was described to be in his 30s. This was 23 years ago, so he'd be in his mid-50s.
Okay, and 5'10", he was big at the time. One can assume that somebody gets bigger with age, less healthy maybe.
Or smaller. You can get bigger or smaller if you're unhealthy.
Yeah, maybe that was too quick to judge.
I've just seen it go both ways. But we know that he is a middle-aged African-American man, stocky build, approximately 5'10". He could still be in the Baltimore area. He could have been passing through. His profile really depends on whether or not he knew Jody. So let's talk about someone that just did this as a stranger who just saw this as a crime of opportunity. What are they looking to get out of this? You know, if you're approaching a young woman, maybe a motivation is a robbery, maybe it's sexual assault when you're approaching them at random, but all he did was talk to her and then shoot her. And as far as we know, nothing was missing from the vehicle. But then again, we don't have an inventory of the vehicle prior to the exchange. We know that he reached in and grabbed something. So maybe it was a robbery.
Or at least intended to be so. Maybe he reached in and attempted to grab something but didn't even find anything. But either way, it kind of seems like that the motive had something to do with the intention to rob or burglarize.
I mean, we don't know that. It could have been a completely disorganized person. It could have been a mentally ill person who had some sort of paranoid delusion that was just acting irrationally. And it's difficult, if not impossible, to try to rationalize or break down irrational behavior. It literally could have just been someone in a severe episode of psychosis. And I'd like to put in a disclaimer that many, if not most people that are dealing with psychosis don't resort to violence. I think it's a common stereotype that people that are schizophrenic or psychotic are inherently violent or prone to acts of violence. That's definitely not the case. What the pattern is a lack of touch with reality. And sometimes when you're delusional, those delusions grow paranoid. And sometimes in response to that paranoia or in response to certain ideas or beliefs, violence can result. And if this was a random act, and it just resulted from a very brief conversation and it wasn't robbery, I do think it's possible that this is just a mentally ill person.
You know, now that you say that, I kind of have like an entire vision in my head that I didn't previously have. It seems like some stars align for me. For some reason, what I have a feeling about now is that maybe this guy felt slighted by her in some way. Maybe he was at the same bar that night or had encountered her some other time that day. And maybe he felt like she was disrespectful or rude or whatever. I really don't know. And then maybe he just like was following her after that.
Right. And crimes that are committed by a stranger are the most difficult to solve because there's a lack of victim offender relationship. So where does an investigator even start? How can they make that connection? So when there is no connection, it's easy to say, oh, well, the motive couldn't have been personal animosity, but it very well could have been, whether it was perceived or real. Mm-hmm. Either he perceived some sort of slight that led to animosity, or they had met briefly that night or at a previous night. Jenny said the Mount Washington Tavern was Jody's favorite spot. So perhaps she rejected him in the past. There could have been personal animosity as a motive as well.
Yeah, it's really hard, like you said, to rationalize in the mind of somebody that would do something like this. But I guess if the crime doesn't make sense, then whatever is going inside of their head also doesn't make sense.
Yes, agreed. So, and then we can also think about, what if this was someone that she did know? It's kind of baffling to think that investigators wouldn't have made a connection by now, either through her boyfriend or through her other friends, just trying to figure out everyone that she knew. It could have been someone that others didn't know about that she knew, and they could have had some sort of relationship or some sort of whatever, a relationship of any kind of nature, and other people just weren't aware of it, and thus they haven't been able to make that connection.
Yeah, if she was involved in something in private, or maybe, I don't know, this is obviously a long shot, but like, what if like one of them was blackmailing the other and then something went wrong? I feel like that's like what you see in TV shows when like somebody ends up dead, is if they like know something that they shouldn't know.
Yeah, it's a bit of a long shot.
Yeah,
and I mean,
I got Pretty Little Liars in my head.
Yeah, I think it was 1996 and people weren't texting and people weren't using social media, so it was a different time. So I think it's harder to trace something like that. I mean, anything's possible. If she was caught up in the wrong crowd, if she was mixed up in drugs, that's possible. But I'll say it again, you'd think that if she was mixed up in drugs or had a drug addiction or had amassed a drug debt, for instance, that led to her being killed, which it's not unheard of, but it permanently hinders collection of a debt. You'd think that there would be drugs in her system if that had been an issue over time, but there weren't.
Yeah. Yeah. So the key to solving this murder is finding this guy, and the key to finding this guy is finding some sort of connection or motive or the reason why he went up to talk to her, and we just can't seem, it's a big question mark.
There are other ways for it to be solved. I mean, and that's information or DNA. They have his fingerprints. It's unclear if they have DNA. Jenny didn't seem to think so. She's pursuing having her clothes re-examined and extracted for potential DNA because, like she said, when the perpetrator leaned into her car, put the car in park and grabbed something, he had to have touched her.
Yeah, very likely.
So that's another avenue that investigators could go down, but I think in the absence of information and forensic evidence, trying to profile him is kind of the natural way to go. And since we know so little about any connection, it makes sense why this case has stalled the way that it has.
Yeah, and it's really unfortunate because me personally, I really feel for Jenny, and I don't know. I know that everybody's case deserves to be solved, but this is kind of like hitting home for me, and it makes me kind of like appreciate what I have with my sister.
Yeah, no, it's, of course you take it personally.
Yeah.
When, I think a lot of people who get really fascinated in these cold cases, I think it's very common amongst people, and I'm one of these people. We're hosting a true crime podcast. I started in this because I reached out to Tim and Lance because I was a huge fan of their podcast, Missing Maura Murray. I had been following missing persons cases since I was a child. You did too.
Yep.
I relate to the interest, and I think the reason for a lot of people is you sort of have a feeling of relating to the victim.
Yeah.
And some people can take that to a level that's really unhealthy. I think that a missing person or a murdered person is a really natural vessel for projection. They're not around to speak for themselves. You don't know them. Mm-hmm. All you know about them is how they're described by people who love them. So you hear about them, you hear about their interests, you hear about their personality. You think, oh, like maybe I could have been their friend, or, oh, that sounds like me. And then you feel like you're relating to them, and then it almost becomes personal, and you want it to be solved. And I think there are a lot of empathetic true crime followers. I do think it can get to an extreme level where people are thinking, oh, maybe I could have dated her. And then you really get this idea in your head, and it can get, I think, really unhealthy. But the reason why I'm getting into this is, in this case, this is affecting someone who was an identical twin. And mm-hmm. we talked to Jenny when I first spoke with her. I think it maybe a 2-hour phone call. And we were just sharing our experiences at growing up as a twin and being really close with your identical twin. And it breaks your heart when you know exactly how that must feel to have that loss.
Yeah, it's very profound, but I can't say it enough. I truly admire her perseverance, and she can still, live her life and smile and be productive in society despite having all this weight on her shoulders and all this pain.
Not only that, but she's been very active in trying to get answers. I mean, she's put in a lot of money in these billboards, in, suing the police department to try to get the case file. I'm glad that they reached some sort of agreement. I wish I wish more could have come out of it for her. I think it's a shame when families don't have access to things as simple as an autopsy report or access to the surveillance footage that's pointing to the car when the crime happens. Little things like that I feel like would mean a lot to her. And, things are changing a little bit. In the case of Jennifer Kessie in Florida, her family actually just won their lawsuit, and the case files were released to the family's private investigator, who's combing through it as we speak. I just think having a second set of eyes is really important. At the same time, I understand where law enforcement is coming from. You want to protect your information. You don't want all of the work that you've done to be compromised by everyone in the public knowing, and you don't know who you can trust. in the Maura Murray case, Fred Murray had sued the state of New Hampshire 1 year after the disappearance, and he wanted access to the case files so he can go through it himself, so he can go through it with private investigators, and he lost. And it's devastating for these families. And, Jenny fell somewhere in between the two where they agreed to just keep her more updated. But I can see both sides, so it's just a really impossible situation.
Yeah, I can imagine that if I were in her shoes, that I would be fighting as well, and I would want to know every little thing because they don't know anything. And she's just in agony because of it. So I hope that, I don't know, if there's like the tiniest chance out there that somebody that is listening to this knows someone that knows someone that knows someone that knows someone that knows something, then maybe they can do something. Maybe they can please empathize with Jenny and let Jody rest in peace.
If you have information, there is a cash reward of $31,000. You can remain anonymous. You can contact the Baltimore County Police at 410-307-2020 or Metro Crime Stoppers at 1-866-756-2587. True Crime Twins is written and hosted by Chloe and Melina Canter. It is produced by Crawlspace Media. Our music was composed by the captain, host of True Crime Garage. Special thanks to Tim Polari, Lancerine Stirna, and to all of our listeners. Keep in touch with True Crime Twins on social media. You can find us on Instagram at True Crime Twins Podcast,
on Twitter at True Crime Twins,
and you can also email us with any questions or comments at truecrimetwinspodcast@gmail.com. Don't forget to rate and subscribe.